From the moment you were told to man up, you began abandoning yourself.
For men, testosterone is our primary sex hormone and it will peak in our 20s, then decline at a steady rate, 1 to 3% per year. By the time we're in our 50s, that could be 30 to 50% lower than it was in our 20s. I'm just not as strong as I used to be, haven't got the energy. It's easily confused with signs of stress and or aging.
You learn to perform, to impress, to pretend. But inside, you're starving to be seen.
Men are less good at maintaining their social networks. As they get older, they tend to become more isolated. Even if they have those networks, they don't really open up to them to talk about what they're feeling, what they're going through. Whereas women will talk about things openly. Oh, these are my symptoms. This is what's going on. Oh, go speak to this person. They have that network there. This is where men can come under so much pressure and feel very alone with this.
James Davis uncovers the invisible survival system men carry, and the terrifying truth that most of us have never actually met ourselves.
Men's identity has been very wrapped up in their career. When they retired, they felt a bit lost in the world. They were suddenly no longer that person.
Have you ever wondered what masculinity even is in the modern era? Are you ready to move beyond the macho bully or the soy boy archetypes? I'm Marc Azoulay, and this is the Men's Therapy Podcast. Together, we'll explore how neuroscience, Jungian psychology, and Buddhist philosophy can transform your life, your marriage, and your business. Are you ready to deep dive into the minds of men? Let's begin. Hello and welcome back to the Men's Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Marc Azoulay, and I'm here with James Davis. He's an expert on andropause, which is low testosterone in men. He's a coaching psychologist, and he's the author of a book called The Midlife Male Handbook. So I'm really excited to have you on the show, James, because a lot of my clients are starting to become more aware of this. I think even the past 5 or 10 years, the veil has started to be pulled back on the importance of testosterone and the importance of hormones for men.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, Mark, thank you so much for having me on here. I really appreciate it, and it's great to chat with you. And it's great to raise awareness of this. So the reason I wrote this book was because I wanted to shed light on the andropause. Because like you said, it's not a commonly known term, and people don't even really know about low testosterone and its symptoms. If they do have heard of testosterone, it's usually in that context of sports or bodybuilding. They just think, oh, it's got negative connotations. But we don't realize the effect that diminishing testosterone levels have not just on our physicality, but our psychology and our emotional state as well. So it's great to get the conversation going.
Yeah, so tell me more about the mental state. Let's start there. How does it impact guys' mental health when testosterone is low or dipping?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So testosterone plays a number of roles in the body, but on the psychological, emotional side, it's responsible for our confidence, our get up, our go, our drive, also our sex drive, which is heavily linked to our psychology for a lot of men. So when levels are low, we can start to feel that malaise, right? Everything starts to feel like it's a bit of a chore. We might struggle to really motivate ourselves. We lack focus. We might find like our memory is not as good as it was. So we're just lacking that motivation, that mojo really to go forward. Then, of course, if we've got other symptoms, like if our libido is fluctuating or dying off, that's going to put psychological pressures on us as well.
Yeah. So is andropause, is that mainly like midlife when it starts to drop off naturally? Is that what you're focusing on primarily?
Yeah. So for men, testosterone is our primary sex hormone and it will peak in our 20s, then decline at a steady rate for most people, like 1 to 3% per year, which doesn't sound a lot. But by the time we're in our 50s, that could be 30 to 50% lower than it was in our 20s. So then we could start to notice the effects of this. We might notice like, I'm just not as strong as I used to be. I'm carrying less muscle mass. I'm putting on more weight around my midsection. Haven't got the energy, haven't got the drive, haven't got the focus. The thing is, I think one of the reasons it hasn't been talked about, it's easily confused with signs of stress and or aging, right? So people are just like, oh, I'm just getting old. This is just part of it. But just like we've had a revolution in menopause in the last decade or so and talking a lot more openly about the symptoms of menopause for females and the treatments available through HRT, I think we need to start looking at, what is going on for men hormonally. And you'll know from your work, Mark, that it's not just the hormone side. Like all the research says men are less good at maintaining their social networks. So as they get older, they tend to become more isolated. Even if they have those networks, they don't really open up to them to talk about what they're feeling, what they're going through. And they're less likely to go to their health practitioner to say, I need help, right? We're very much of that generation that are like, be strong, keep it in, just sort it out yourself. Whereas women will talk about things openly. Oh, these are my symptoms. This is what's going on. Oh, go speak to this person. They have that network there. And I think this is where men can come under so much pressure and feel very alone with this. And that was the reason for writing the book. I recognize that men might not feel comfortable raising this, talking about it, asking about it. So the book kind of gives a pathway to understand, oh, this is what could be going on for you. This is what you could be experiencing. This is why, and here's what you can do about it.
Yeah, I think that's really well needed, because like you're saying, I think a lot of guys feel self-confidence dipping when they feel like they can't lift as much, or that it takes longer for them to recover, or their sex drive is in the tank, because they don't know the science behind it. They don't know that it's like something natural, or there's something that's correctable, right? That you can actually like fix some of these issues. But I think a lot of guys are extremely private with the way that we're suffering. And so much of it can be biological too. When I have guys that come in, especially if they're, in midlife, and they start talking to me about depression, the first thing I recommend is go get a testosterone test, you know, because, I'm obviously a huge supporter of therapy, but there's only so much we can do if the biology isn't in the right place first. You got to get that medical and that biology stuff figured out before you could do any kind of emotional stuff on top of that. And a lot of guys are always surprised, like, "Oh, testosterone, really? Me? Like, I played, football in high school. Like, I thought it was good." And it's like, check it out, check it out. And often they're low. I think depression is often misdiagnosed in guys, and they're on a psychoactive medication when really they need a hormone replacement.
Well, this is probably I'd say that culturally our medical system is kind of like geared to treating the issue once it's arisen, rather than looking at how we prevent it arising. And a lot of those treatments tend to be sticking plasters. So things like antidepressants have their place, obviously, but essentially you're just like putting a band-aid. Oh, you don't feel those emotions anymore. Great, you can carry on with your life. But actually, it could be something like low testosterone. And as you know from your work, it could be something else. It could be, childhood trauma, something that's happened. There are many layers to it. But I think the more we can understand the complexity of it and look at what the other factors could be, the more compassion we can have with ourselves and look for those for the solutions as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious, and this might not be entirely the client base you work with, but when I work with younger men too, it seems like testosterone is at an all-time low. I'm curious your thoughts about that. I mean, I've heard some things around like microplastics, around just like kind of lack of physical activity in general. Like, what are your thoughts on the up and coming generation?
Yeah, so the research tells us that testosterone levels are dropping, right? So they are dropping. The average 20-year-old guy today will have lower testosterone levels than a 50-year-old in the 80s. So that's quite scary. And if they're starting from that base now, right? If it's low in their 20s, when they get to midlife, what's that going to mean for them? What's the impact? The causes of that, not so simple. I think we can look at things like our food environment, pollutants, the prevalence of things like the contraceptive pill and added estrogen into our water supplies. Things like that have all had an impact. We know we're eating diets that are much higher in sugar, much higher in processed foods. I'm talking about the general population here. And then we've moved away from those kind of whole natural foods. At the same time, as you say, if we go back 100 years only, which is a blink of an eye in evolutionary terms, our forefathers were doing very physical work, most of them. And we know that exercise is one of the things that helps raise and maintain testosterone levels. If we're, sitting down all day and we're not doing sport, we're not doing exercise, and that's our childhood, and then that's our work life, then that's going to have an impact. So there's a lot to unpick there. The other theory that I've heard, and I don't think we're far off in evolutionary as well, has there been some sort of selective partner selection, with the rise of feminism, have women gravitated towards men that perhaps weren't as gung-ho masculine, maybe had more of these feminine understanding traits, and so that's come down. But I think that's a bit fanciful, because that would take generations to happen, not this fast. I think it's more like if we look at chemicals, pollutants, and things like that in the food chain and environments.
Right. Yeah, I'm more on your side because, I agree with my understanding of evolution. It's like generations upon generations to really shift that. Whereas in some ways, it's kind of scary that it could be a pollutant that is doing it, right? Or I agree with the lack of physical exercise, because my novice understanding about this is that lifting heavy specifically, right, is one of the things that boosts testosterone.
Yeah, absolutely. And we forget, right? We only have to go back 200 years, and we're kind of pre-industrial revolution. So that meant
Laboring.
for most of us, we were working like 10 hours a day in a hard physical labor. So, we don't have the data to go back and go, oh, what did a 60-year-old man in those days, what were their testosterone levels like? Because, we didn't know how to look for it. But it's likely they probably would have been much higher than today, because our lifestyle isn't supporting what we need to maintain those testosterone levels. We haven't got the physical activity, we're not lifting heavy weights, and our food environment tends to be poor.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so let me ask you that question directly, is like, what can someone do to help improve their testosterone? What could they bring into their lives, because we're not getting it from our culture?
Yeah, so I'll give you two answers on that, and I'll come back to the first one. So the first answer is testosterone replacement therapy, but I want to loop back to that. I'd say the first course of action is always to see what you can do from a lifestyle perspective to raise it, because medications aren't a magic pill, despite what we'd like to think. So things you can do are start a regular form of exercise. Now listen, if you're just beginning, just getting out and walking is enough, right? But you want to build up. We want to be doing resistance training, because we know we're naturally losing muscle mass as we age. Muscle is metabolically active, meaning the more we have on our frame, the higher metabolic rate is. So as we age and we lose muscle, our metabolism slows, but we're still eating the same amount. What do we get? We get more body fat. When we carry more body fat, that lowers our testosterone. So it's a multi-pronged approach. We want to be lifting heavy, and we want to hit each muscle group twice a week. That's the science behind it. And if ideally with things like compound lifts, so things like the squat, the bench press, things that engage multiple muscle groups. We want to do some cardio around that for general health. And again, things like short bursts of high intensity interval training will also elevate testosterone. And here's the thing, like if we're doing that consistently, we're going to bring that baseline up. Also, from a mood and emotion point of view, you'll know from your work, Mark, that when we exercise regularly, we produce endorphins, which gives us that feel-good thing, raises dopamine. And the amazing thing is, even on the days we don't exercise, we still get that boost. So that's the exercise side. On the food side, try and eliminate as much sugar from your diet as possible. And food manufacturers pack it into absolutely everything. It disrupts our hormone pathways. Our gut doesn't like it, and there's a lot to be said for our gut metabolism, and our gut biomes affecting our mood as well. As you all know, like poor gut health is strongly linked with anxiety and depression. Make sure we're drinking enough water. Make sure we're getting enough lean protein in our diet to support actually building muscle. And make sure we're not eating too many carbohydrates. So again, the Western diet tends to be very heavy on carbohydrates, like 60% more. We actually want to be probably more like in the 40 to 50% range at the top. So those are basic things that you can do to raise testosterone. But I'd say the really important thing is they all kind of gear to the physical. And obviously if you raise testosterone, it will have an impact on the psychological. But again, we're very much geared to think about what I call the external world. We think about, if I'm putting on weight, I'll do this workout or I'll do this diet. But actually, these hormonal changes, as you've identified, you say to clients, go get a testosterone test. If it's low, we can be more anxious, more depressed, less confident. So we want to be actively practicing psychological tools that will help make us feel more positive, more present, more grateful, all those kind of things. And then you ask the other thing, TRT, so I'll come back to that, testosterone replacement therapy. So this is the medical intervention. If your levels are below a certain level, then you can start introducing testosterone to your system, and that can come in patches and gels and injections. The only thing for men to be aware of is that it is then a lifelong commitment, because you'll shut down your own natural testosterone production. If you're still planning on having kids, it can have an impact on fertility. There are workarounds with that, and it is contraindicated for certain other health conditions. So it's one to really have a detailed chat with your health practitioner before you embark on that.
Yeah. So two threads there. I want to come back to the first one because there's a lot of good stuff there. But let's talk about TRT just for a moment. And I am curious about the risk, because it's, I think you have guys that are doing this replacement way more, right? And they're doing it into their 50s, 60s, maybe even later. Is there any risk to continuing to do it until you die? Or is there some level where you eventually kind of get off of it and you're just old? Well, you never like a better term, like what the long term look like for these guys?
It's a great question, and I think it depends on your other health factors and how you're feeling on it. So listen, if you're a 70-year-old guy and your testosterone's on the floor and that's making every day a struggle and you're not enjoying life, then it's going to be super beneficial. If you're a 70-year-old guy and your levels are kind of like around normal or just below and everything's okay, then maybe it's not for you. But the thing to consider is that the younger you go on it, the sooner you're shutting down your own production and the longer you're going to have to stay on it. So again, this is why I'd say address the lifestyle factors first, and see what you can do by working with those. For say, go and get a blood test, work on the lifestyle factors for 3 months, get another blood test, see if it's come up, and then you can make a decision about what you want to do. And also think about, although we have levels, everyone's an individual. So it's not oh yeah, I'm low, I need to have it. It's like, well, how are you feeling? Are the symptoms affecting you in a negative way, or are you actually, everything's cool at the moment? In which case, maybe just wait a bit.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm hearing is like, make sure you're really educated about your decision to go on it, because it's difficult to revert once you start doing it, right? And the longer you keep doing it, the more dependent you become on it.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly that.
Okay. Well, so yeah, let's talk more about those lifestyle changes then, because it sounds like that's a good place for people to start, especially if there's younger men listening to the podcast too. You can start this now, so you don't have this issue. You're in your 40s and 50s.
Exactly. I'd say get ahead of it, right? Get ahead of it. And listen, there's a thing on just general health anyway, right? We all know if the whole pandemic taught us anything, it's the healthier you are, the better chances are of coming through something like that, and of general health things. So be healthy. Things like carrying too much body fat, we know that's really bad for your cardiovascular health, your risk of diabetes, all those things. And that will impact testosterone. The more body fat we carry, it lowers our testosterone levels. So we want to be, looking to lower that body fat, increase the muscle mass, stay active. And like I say, because we do get this natural muscle wastage, and also our bone density decreases as we age, we want to be doing these weight-bearing exercises. So in an ideal world, yes, getting on the weights at least twice a week and hitting those major muscle groups, because it's going to help your skeletal health and your muscle health.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, so I think what you bring, right, that's different from other practitioners, is you bring a lot of that psychological piece too. So I'm curious from that perspective, how do you keep people in a good mindset, or how do you keep them motivated? Because I can just imagine if there's someone listening out there that, is maybe overweight, hasn't exercised in a decade, is eating a bunch of junk food, they might be listening to this conversation and be like, yeah, that's not for me. Like it's too hard. These guys are telling me to do way too much stuff all at the same time. So how do you help someone like that just start to get the ball rolling? Because I find that, getting something moving from rest is the hardest thing,
Absolutely, and momentum breeds momentum, I always say, but getting started can be hard. Well, I'd say it's always harder in our heads than it is in reality. So dive into the psychology. The role of our subconscious, as you all know, Mark, with all, is to keep us safe. But safe, it's got a very loose definition. Safe just means as they are. It's a status quo. So, I mean, you could feel terrible about your life and about yourself, but to the subconscious, you're alive. So it's doing a great job. So we need to overcome that, because when you take steps to change the status quo, like, okay, I don't like sitting on the couch 10 hours a day watching Netflix. I'm actually going to make a choice to get up and go. That voice in your head's going to go, oh man, don't do that. Just stay on the couch. You can do it tomorrow. So it's understanding that that's going to come up for you, and then understanding how you deal with that. And I say what I advise clients is start small. Be compassionate with yourself, but play it forward. As human beings, we're great at looking at the cost of things, but not considering the opportunity cost. So it's like, oh, it'll be so hard for me to go and do that exercise. Well, yeah, but what's going to be harder in 2 years' time, when you're carrying more weight, you're even more unfit, and maybe you've got even some more severe health issues? That's harder. So pick your hard, right? And I always say, play it forward. And something I work on with clients is this concept of self-identity. It's like, you're the person you are now, but let's look ahead down the road. Who do you want to be in a year's time? Yeah. What the goals you've accomplished? What beliefs, what behaviors does that person, that version of you have that's achieved those goals? Step into the emotional state of it, and really getting fixed on that self-identity and using that as a motivator to move forward.
Yeah. I like that a lot, right? Like, because I think if you can make an identity thing, if you can make it down at that root level, then it becomes like, yeah, I'm just the guy that works out. You know, it's not that I have to force myself to work out. It's not that I have to do all that. It's like, yeah, I value a healthy lifestyle. Maybe you made some friends at the gym. Maybe it's a time where you can get time away from your family, which I know guys is we need that every once in a while. Like finding other benefits, I think is really critical. Uh, I found for a lot of guys, again, if you can afford it, like getting a personal trainer or joining group classes can be a great place to get that social reinforcement. Can be really critical in getting that ball rolling. So you don't feel like you're just alone in the gym, not knowing what you're doing. I think that can be really intimidating for a lot of people.
Absolutely, accountability is massive. And if you can't afford a trainer, or just get a buddy. Go to a buddy. Hey, look, should we get ourselves in shape? And then you commit. Let's meet up at 7 a.m. on Monday morning and do something together. Then when your alarm goes off and you're thinking, oh man, you'll be like, actually, Dave's waiting for me. I better get myself out there. So that's a massive one as well.
Totally. Yeah. And back to your thing about male loneliness, which I'm curious your take on too, is like, I think guys, I find that we bond through activity, we bond through challenge. Just sitting and talking for an hour is actually kind of weird for us. I notice that with a lot of my clients. So if we're doing things together, if we're trying to get fit together, if we're going on a hike, if we're building something, I think that's a more kind of traditional masculine way of connecting versus just talking. So it's like if you can do something and share a hobby with somebody, that's how you can start to make friends. It's like have a shared mission. If you're enjoying the podcast so far, please hit the subscribe button and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us to reach more men and inspire them to become the best versions of themselves. Thank you for your support. And now back to the show.
Exactly. And again, it's something else. So I'm always a big fan of. I'm a bit of a history geek, and I love like socio-cultural history. So again, if you look back, if we think to like 200 years ago, we would have probably lived in a small community where everyone was geared around the same goals, right? And it would have been, right, we need to go and plow the fields, and now we need to go and bring the harvest. And it was a communal activity. You would go out there with the other guys, you would do it. When you've done it, then you would all go celebrate and hang out. Guess what? If one of you guys had a problem, so everyone else would rally round and help. But in the modern world, we've migrated to cities, we've moved to office jobs, we've kind of lost that. And I think this is why we have an identity crisis for some men at the moment is, since maybe the post World War II, men's identity has been very wrapped up in their career. Like, I am what I do. And if we see that with the generation before us, right? So like our fathers, often when they retired, you observe that they felt a bit lost in the world. They were suddenly no longer that person that did that thing. Now they were just like, well, who am I? And I think that's still a really important question for men. Who am I if I step away from the career and the thing that I do? And it's something that's uncomfortable to look at often, but it's so valuable to look at. So we have to understand that we're still of value just by being us. We don't have to be doing something. We can just be being. But yeah, having that community is so important. That is what is lost. And I think it's lost more and more because even when you have a work setting, and here's the thing, we're speeding this up, Mark, because now we've got hybrid working or working from home. So it's not even like the workplace wasn't really a substitute for it anyway. But you might work somewhere maybe on a Friday, they'd be like, okay, let's go out and have some beers together. But now you might not even see your workers once every couple of weeks or something.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I can bang on that drum too, right? It's like I think in cities it's so easy to be isolated and to kind of like cruise, like to have everything delivered to you, not really have to struggle in certain ways. There's no survival pressure really, whereas in some communities, I mean, that's why me and my wife moved out to a rural community is like we wanted some of that, or I wanted some of that too, of like, when there's a big snowstorm, I'm out there driving a plow truck and I'm helping my neighbors and I'm meeting people and like kind of what you said, everyone's doing the same thing. Everyone's trying to survive this snowstorm. And we're chatting on our apps, we have Nextdoor app or whatever. And like, there's a real sense of community that I've never experienced in my life. I grew up in the suburbs and then I was in Boulder, Colorado, but now being in like actually kind of a hostile environment, I think it forces people to bond together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it gives you something else as well, which is a kind of sense of purpose, right? Because it's like, I'm part of this community and there's things that we need to do to keep going. And again, I think that's where modern life can fall down for a lot of men is they just lose sight of what their purpose, of what their goals are. And of course, if we become demotivated and we're questioning like, who am I? What do I want from life anyway? Even without the pressures of everything that comes with midlife, juggling your career, your relationships, your finances, low testosterone in the mix, that can be pretty hard for men.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I talk with my guys about is I think men want heroic opportunities. We want moments where we can feel like the hero. And I think being, part of a community, even volunteering and helping somebody or, helping somebody move or dragging some shit out of their front yard, right? Like we feel like heroes during that. And I think that really gets lost, like you said, in modern society, because it's, we can donate, I guess, but that's very unfulfilling on a personal level, but like there isn't that much that we can do physically, I think, that uses our body and makes us feel like we've actually saved the day.
And you mentioned isolation, and we know again the research says that like the single biggest indicator for mortality is social isolation. So I think if you're a guy and you're listening to this and you are feeling isolated, then just start to reach out, start to see what you could do. Maybe just ask that person that you've seen in the street or someone can we meet up for a coffee, something like that, because we feel like we're social animals, right? We are human beings are social animals. There's always romanticizing for men about the lone wolf. You know what? In real life, the lone wolf dies because it hasn't got a pack behind it. We need to be out there and socializing and making connections. So it's really, really important.
Yeah. Well, so let's widen the scope a little bit. I'm curious, what other issues do you see with your midlife guys? Because I imagine, maybe they come to you for testosterone to begin with, but it starts to open up a whole kind of, Pandora's box of what they're going through. So, I imagine you have your pulse really on men in this stage of life. So what are their lives like? What are some of the things that they struggle with? What do they need to work on?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it does vary from individual to individual, but I'd say the most common theme that presents is just a feeling of being a bit lost in their own life. I think when we're young, we can be very clear on what our values are and what our direction is. So, we'll go into our career and it's like, there's that kind of drive and ambition to ascend, whatever that is. And we're quite clear on, but by the time we hit midlife, maybe we're there, right? And this is really common for guys. I've reached that point and it's just not what I thought it would be. And actually, I'm now looking at what I've sacrificed, time seeing my kids grow up, time with my wife. Maybe my marriage has broken down. And I'm like, wow, was it worth it? Because I'm sat here and what I thought I wanted, I now don't want. On the flip side, it could be like, wow, I'm at this point. I really thought life is going to deliver me a lot more than this. Like, I don't understand what's gone wrong. But in either case, it's fine. We can't change what's been, but we have the power to change what comes ahead. And it really is about taking that agency to say, okay, I recognize where I'm at. I recognize it's really uncomfortable for me, but here's where and who I want to be moving forward, and then start working towards that.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask you kind of I guess a deeper question. It's an issue I run to with a lot of my guys, right? Where I think in the psychology field, we often say like, be your authentic self, right? Be yourself, figure out what you like. And I think when you talk about the midlife crisis, which I think we're kind of talking about here, is like, you have these guys who have postponed themselves, right? Maybe they were a vibrant kid, but then they just bought into getting a job and a wife and a family and going to a good school and making the money, getting the car. And then by the time they're, in their 40s or 50s, they're like, shit, I don't know who I am anymore. I'm just this kind of like cookie cutter dad, and I've lost my identity, right? So my question for you, and I know there's an easy answer of like, how do you know who you are? I guess, like, how do you find yourself? Because when I talk to, guys in that generation specifically, they don't know, right? They're like, I don't even know what I'm interested in. I don't even know what I'm into. Like, I've just been doing everything for everybody else, that at this point, I'm just a wallet, just a pocketbook and a set of wheels.
And this is why a crisis can occur often for couples as well, right? Because the woman will be in exactly the same position. She'll like, raise the kids, they're leaving, or they've left home, or they've done the career. Who am I without that? When I've given up all of myself for that thing. And for men, I think it's very much like the career, maybe also the kids. And it's like, who am I now without that? And it is a bit of an existential question. There's a great book called The Happiness Curve by Jonathan Rauch, and he actually researched and found peak unhappiness comes at around the age of 45. But then we start to come up the other side and get happier, which is maybe more about letting the ego dissolve and kind of accepting where we're going to go. But how you get back to where you are, I think a really important tool is to look at our values, right? Because as I said, often when we're young, we'll look at values, but we might not look at them again. It's not really common to go, oh, what are my values? What do I stand for? What lights me up? And so we can have sometimes taken ourselves off on the wrong track. And that might be feel disillusioned with life, right? It might be like, that was great when we were 26. Yeah, we thought this was the best thing. My values are all about earn as much money as I can and have fast cars. But now I'm 66 and that just leaves me feeling really empty. Well, your values have changed over time and that's okay. So I always encourage clients to sit down and spend time thinking about values. And that can be quite a hard, multi-layered exercise. But once you can distill that down, you can see, okay, well, where is your life aligning and not aligning to those values? And it can be quite surprising. You're like, well, yeah, now I know my top 3 values. It's good to get down to the top 3 to 5 are these. But I can see I'm spending most of my time doing this thing that doesn't align with any of them. No wonder I'm unhappy and feel unfulfilled. So then it's about where can I make changes? And the other thing I want to say, Mark, I think it's really important, is again, I think in modern culture, we're obsessed with the idea of the big change, that eureka moment, that, moment of enlightenment, everything will change for us. And it's the one big thing that will do it. It's not like that in reality. We don't have to make massive decisions. It could be like, oh, I'm just going to do this one thing slightly differently. Oh, I've got a value now about giving in the community. So I'm not going to quit my job and do it, but I'll just give some time at the weekends to doing this thing. So it's about finding the ways forward, having looked at your values as they are now.
Yeah, I think that's really critical. I do the same with my guys. Like, look, make like 1, maybe 2 changes a year, but make them last. Even if it's like, oh, you're going to eat quinoa instead of brown rice, or it's different, like little minor changes. Because I do think that's the only thing that works. Because I agree. I think people want that movie moment where they see the light and they talk to God and they have this like big inspiration and they're just like a reborn from the ashes. And it's like, not it. It's not it. And maybe you can do that. You can manufacture that for like a month, maybe 2, but at some point you're just gonna fall back. And then I'm sure right? Like diets don't work. There's so much research showing that like just willpower and restriction alone is a recipe for failure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about this, and I'm a massive believer. It's small changes consistently over time compound to massive transformation. And whether that's with your diet, your exercise, your mindset, whatever. But yeah, it's so funny. It's true, isn't it? Like, I think Hollywood and fairy tales have a lot to, like this, someone's going to wave the magic wand and then I'll find this thing and it'll be amazing. But life doesn't tend to be like that. It's about making those small changes that compound over time.
Yeah, and I just want to just keep reiterating that because I think for a lot of the guys that come into treatment, and I'm curious what your clients are like, is like they want it to happen so fast. But the pace is like really glacier, and it's like, it's a sine wave. So it's like you're gonna be doing good, you're gonna have setbacks, you're gonna learn, we're gonna get higher. Like it's this kind of like wiggle that's happening. And I see a lot of dudes get really discouraged by that because I think they're hoping for the quick fix, or they've been sold the quick fix. Do you see that in your work as well?
Yeah. I mean, I think again, the advertising and marketing industry, it's like everything has to be faster or better, right? You mentioned diets, how they don't work. I always laugh, the diets are like, lose 14 pounds in 6 days. Then to better it, they'll be like, lose 20 pounds in 4 days. It's always how much more in less time. And that's not how it works at all. And I always say to guys, it's like, look, you grow up, say your adult life started when you're around 20. If you're 45 now, that's 25 years of learned behavior, beliefs, ingrained habits. We're not going to change that overnight. And maybe we don't need to change all of it. We probably don't. But let's look at the bits that aren't serving you anymore. Because this is the thing that we tend not to do as human beings. It's we tend to take our thought patterns and our beliefs as truth for us. Like, oh, that's just the way I am. Well, actually, is that still serving me? Does the belief that I'm not good enough, does that serving me, or is it not serving me? If it's not serving you, then let's actively work to change it, because who knows what you can achieve on the other side of that.
Yeah. I'm curious, do you have an example either from your own life or from a client that you worked with that can highlight kind of the arc of change?
Yeah. Well, my own lived experience. I was running a business overseas in Spain with my first wife, and it had been very, very stressful. And so I was in my mid-40s, but I thought the relationship was okay. We were just like very consumed with the work and trying to keep it going. And then she was just like, that's it, I'm out, I'm gone. And that floored me. And I was left on the floor for a long time. So the knock to my confidence, I'm like, well, I'm 45. Like, oh, wow, I don't even know if I want to do this business anymore. Who's going to want me now? I'm not even going to be able to find, like another partner. And I had to go through a period of I guess, grieving, acknowledging the loss and grieving. But then it was recognizing, putting my hand up to ask for help and picking myself up, recognize I had the tools to come through the other side. And it's like, well, I can lie in bed in the morning thinking, oh, poor me, how terrible this is. Or I can be like, okay, time to put on the big boy pants. What am I going to do today to move me forward? What's the step I can take today to make tomorrow better? And it was really hard, so I don't want to underplay that, but amazing rewards lay at the other side of it. And it's the same for clients. I have clients with similar experiences. A really common thing is, they'll hit that kind of late 40s, 50s, they're senior in an organization, they'll be like, oh, thank you, we don't need you anymore. And they're like, whoa. And I'm like, okay, but you're not your job. Okay, so let's look at what we can do to, your psychological safety around your finances. But then let's also look about what do you want to do now? Because the knee-jerk reaction is like, go get another job doing the same thing as quickly as possible. It's like, do you want to do the same? Were you actually even enjoying the role you would do? And then, oh no, I really wasn't. So there's examples there of, again, looking at that. And I think it's, when we're in it, the emotions tend to make us have a very narrow focus. And you'll know this, Mark. We can be just like, when we're in that trauma and our experience that we have, it's like, well, I've only got these resources. I can only go down this path. But if you can pause, be calm, take a breath, well, actually, these things are transferable. Oh, I can see a path there. Oh, actually, I have a lot of options that can open up for me. Now it's evaluating what I want to do with those options.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious, again, maybe also about pace, or if you're going to ask this question, but the guys that I work with in midlife, they have a lot more baggage. Some of that's very practical, right? Their houses are more expensive. They have kids, they have a wife. Again, they're a homeowner. They have it's harder for them to make rapid changes because they have all this other stuff, right? They also have emotions that they've maybe never worked with, right? There's maybe they have aging parents, right, that need emotional or financial care. And I find that is, a real barrier for a lot of guys to take a risk, and that's what I'm hearing you saying is like, hey, take a risk, try something new, right? Don't just jump right back into the same job. But I know for a lot of men that they're really afraid of that because there are so many people that are dependent on them. Whereas for a young guy, you can kind of, you can sleep on your buddy's couch and eat ramen for, a year too, if you have to, right? You can be very agile because you don't have all those dependents that an older guy does.
Yeah, it's a great question. Listen, I would say when we're younger, we play to win. And when we're older, we play not to lose. And there's a big, big difference in that. And part of that is, we tend to materially, emotionally have a lot more going on. So we're like, oh, I don't want to risk that. And I understand that. And we have to make sure that we're keeping ourselves secure. But the challenge I throw back is like, okay, but what is the risk of staying where you are? Yes, there's a risk to change. But if you're not happy with certain aspects of the way things are, how is that going to be 1 year, 2 years, 5 years down the line? Let's use an extreme example. You get the guy is like, oh, I just can't stand my wife anymore, but I can't afford to divorce her. But we just argue all the time. Well, fine. Yeah, there's a financial. But in 5 years, in 10 years, that's another 10 years of being really, really majorly unhappy. So. It's yes, there's a risk to taking action, but there's also a risk to not taking action. I think it's getting people to recognize that.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I like what you said that young men play, to win and older men play not to lose. I think that's so true. I think that's so true. And I think in my work, it can sometimes cause frustration because I am younger, I mean, I have a wife and hopefully have a kid soon. So at some point I'll be on the other side of the Rubicon, but I think they get a lot out of me brainstorming and giving them that energy. But then in the back of their mind, they're like, yeah, but you don't know what it's like, right? You don't have, 3 kids and, your parents are old and you got to take care of all this stuff. And it's tough to crack into that. It's tough to really crack into that because it's real, right? I mean, like the risk is real. There's way more risk in their lives than in mine.
There is, but I think a useful exercise I use with clients is like, okay, because what human beings are is we're great at catastrophizing, right? It's like, oh, if this thing's happened, then this. I'm like, okay, well, let's write that all down, because you'll see actually when you write it down, it takes some of the power out of it anyway. But then when you do actually, you're looking at it on paper, it's like some of the most extreme outcomes are just ridiculous, right? They're just not going to happen. And I'll remind them, okay, at times in your life, you've done stuff that has resulted in an outcome you didn't want, but yet you're still here. So, there are ways you can negate risk. So, okay, well, how can you protect what you have in the way you need to, but still allow yourself to take the risks that are going to allow you the growth that you need as well? Because it's not, people get very caught in this binary thinking of either or, and often it's not. It's like, well, I can have and, right? It's like, okay, I can find a way to keep my finances secure while I do this, and then maybe, like, if I'm in a career that I really don't like, a job that I really don't like, I've always wanted to do something that would be, I believe would be really hard to make money. I don't know, be an artist, let's say. Listen, but don't go into your boss and go, I quit, and walk out, and then, get your canvas out and hope that you're going to sell something. But, start putting some time aside, in the evenings, the weekend, create your art, start marketing your art, sell your art. It doesn't have to be a replacement straight away. It doesn't have to be the either or. It can be the and. And I think getting people to appreciate that can take a lot of that psychological load off them.
Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you wanted to open up, but you were afraid that it wouldn't be taken well? You ask yourself, what's the point? Nothing's going to change anyway. So you do what you always do. You push it down, numb out the pain with a drink, a night out, or pornography. I've been there myself, and I know that men lack the outlets for emotional expression, which is why I founded Men's Therapy Online, a healing hub for men's mental health. If you've been knocked on your ass or just crave meaningful connection, join Men's Therapy Online, a community of men who just get it. We offer individual therapy, men's groups, and powerful retreats, all led by licensed therapists. At Men's Therapy Online, we will help you to get back on your feet and take your life to the next level. Start your journey today at menstherapy.online. Yeah, I think that's true. I use a metaphor from like the movie like Shawshank Redemption, like how they have that little hole behind the poster and they're like digging it out with that little spoon. And it's like, that's kind of what it is. Like every day you just gotta like hit it with that spoon. And it might not feel like you're doing anything big, but at some point you'll break through. You'll get out of jail. I'm curious from your work, what are some misconceptions that you think people have about men's health or mental health or anything, like, myths that you can kind of debunk that you think are not well understood by the culture at large?
Yeah, so I think I'm not sure what it's like in the US at the moment. In the UK, we're lucky. We've had a lot of focus on menopause and midlife women's health, which is absolutely fantastic and very, very needed, and it's great. And we have initiatives in the workplace now, and that's amazing. But there's still pushback when we look at men's health in the same way. And I think, it's sad. Unfortunately, the statistics, as we've mentioned, it's the highest suicide cohort is midlife men. For all the reasons we've talked about. And I think for some reason that stat doesn't seem to realize. I tell people and they're like, oh, you're kidding, aren't you? Wouldn't it be like road traffic accidents or heart attacks? And I really, and then they actually stop and think. They go, you know what, actually, I know 3 or 4 guys, maybe not know, but I know of. So I think we need to start paying closer attention to those statistics and seeing what we can do to protect men's health. And I do think a lot of it is driven by the pressure men, particularly at our age, and it may be changing as generational change. But certainly in my age group, I'm 52, I think, and older, men didn't really talk about their feelings in an open way. They're not vulnerable. We're taught, don't be vulnerable. It's weak to be vulnerable. Actually, vulnerability is a massive form of strength. And I've observed when you hold out your hand to someone and go, oh, I'm struggling, can you help me? They'll often go, oh, yeah, but you know what? I'm actually struggling too. And then you can help each other. So it's about opening up those conversations, I think, and kind of taking away that that strong silent mythology. That's not to say we all need to be running around talking about our feelings all the time, and all that, but we holding it all in doesn't serve us.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. I know mentorship is also a big part of your practice, right? And your brand. And like, I think as men, we want to be mentors, right? I mean, like, what's more masculine than being a dad, right? And whether it's to your own kids or it's to a younger generation or it's someone that you can help out, right? Like, that is what it's about. So I agree, right? I think the more open we can be, the more effective mentors we can be as well, because we can lead by example. And we can lead by showing like, hey, here's something that I struggled with, but then I got through it, and I can help you do the same. Um, I'm curious about that strong silent type, and this is just something I guess for my own practice. I for whatever reason have attracted a number of people from the UK and from Scotland, and they have that. They have that in a way that in America we don't quite. I don't think. I think ours is more like angry. Like I think our version is like American dudes are just kind of like pissed off all the time, whereas I see with like the English men I've worked with, it's just kind of like yeah, stoic and just like it's fine, almost like pick up your pickaxe and go back into the coal mine kind of thing. Like it's a very like industrial mindset. And there's also a lot of drinking, I think, with that of like the normalized drinking of like, hey, drinking every single day after work as a way just to kind of like shut down your brain. So yeah, I guess I'm just curious your comments on like English culture and English male culture and what that's like.
Yeah, so I mean, what I observe, I think Americans in general, both men and women, tend to wear their feelings a lot more on their sleeve. Like they'll tell you what I love. Americans, they'll tell you like, oh yeah, I'm really good at this. I'm great at this. And they're not bragging, but they're just not afraid to say it. They have confidence. Whereas certainly for my generation and above, it was like, oh, never say you're good at something. You always be humble. You don't want to stand out. With feelings, it's like keep them inside. Big boys don't cry. All of that kind of stuff. So I think that's very ingrained. We talk about the English stiff upper lip. We think of the classic example of the old Victorian explorers, and everyone's getting massacred around them. They're like, no, never mind, tally ho. And it's kind of a mythology that persists. And to your point, drinking culture. I actually read something now that said 43% of Gen Zs now don't drink at all in the UK, at all, which is massive.
Wild.
But there is still a big drinking culture here, and So I've lived in Spain as well. So in Spain, the culture is very much around. It's interesting. They'll drink all through the day. So you'll see guys go to a bar in the morning and they'll have a coffee and maybe a beer and a shot. And then they'll drink wine at lunch with beer, and then they'll go out and they drink. But it's low level through the day. What the British tend to do is maybe keep moderate levels. So and then it's that Friday, Saturday, the binge drinking. It's just like, right, I'm out. I'm going to hammer 8 pints. Yeah. Although not so much these days with the price of a pint in the UK.
Right. Yeah. The economy is a barrier to that. But I definitely see a lot of that. I see it being normalized, even with the younger men I work with. They're like, yeah, well, my dad drank every day. He was like drinking a pint every day after work with his friends, and like, that's normal. But then you get guys that, have health issues and certainly emotional suppression because of that, because I think they're just like using it to bottle up all their feelings,
Absolutely. I think, listen, people ask me like, Claire, my wife, is completely teetotal. And so that had a really beneficial effect on me of cutting mine down. But I still enjoy it because I like the social aspect of it. And I think, there's some people out there, they're very puritanical and they go, oh, alcohol is just bad and you shouldn't. I'm like, well, yeah, you know what? Wait. Objectively, it's not good for the body, right? We know that. But if it's within a social context, if it's that you're meeting your friends, and it's like, okay, we'll have a couple of beers and we'll chat and you will talk about stuff. I think it'd be a really positive experience that alcohol's actually helping enable there. The problem comes, like you say, when it's like every night, it's like 2 pints, 3 pints or more, or a glass of wine, bottle of wine. I speak to clients and they're like, I'll drink half to a whole bottle of wine a night, and I'm like, that's really a lot. And they're like, it doesn't feel like a lot. I'm like, no, that is a lot. If you look at the health guidelines, that is a lot of units of alcohol. And again, I think the pandemic had a big part to play in that because everyone was sitting at home, and it was, you didn't have that office hours. It wasn't really socially acceptable to come in the office at lunchtime, like swigging a bottle of wine. But suddenly you're at home. We ran a load of activities and we were seeing it, people like, oh, I'll wait till 5 o'clock before I have a drink. Then it was 4, then it was 3, then it was like, oh, it's midday. And that can become hard to break, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Like, I don't think drinking is bad or evil, but I do think people need to have control and have choice around it. When it becomes that repetitive habit or something that is driven by emotions and by fear, not by, actual enjoyment of the, alcohol, then that has more power over you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, Mark. Yeah, spot on.
I'm also curious, like, I'm trying to figure out how to frame this into a question. I guess the question is like, if you could wave, like magic wand question, you could wave a magic wand, right? Like, how do you think men's health should be educated around or, kind of looped into the medical system or psychological system? Because I think right now, like we've said, I think it's getting more well-known, but it's still a specialty and it's still certainly pretty taboo. So what would be the ideal outcome to have this stuff be kind of integrated into our just daily life?
I think there should be more government involvement in pushing general awareness, right? And it has to come from that level. And I'm not talking about like nanny state intervention, but let's use an example. In the UK, breast screening, cervical smears for women, they are really, really regular. They're on top of that stuff, and that's great. But men, you have to actually go and ask for a prostate test. No one's checking up on you. No one's saying, why is that? The risk is massive. Prostate cancer is massively on the increase. So I think we need to look at men's health from a broad perspective of what interventions we can make to identify where things are going wrong earlier. So where can we do more screening for certain types of cancers that we know men are more prone to? Where could we maybe start looking at regular testosterone blood tests for men as they age, and then take appropriate action on that? Where can we raise awareness of men just talking about this so they're aware, right? So there was a recent survey in the UK, 78% of men 45 plus hadn't heard of the term andropause or weren't aware of the symptoms of low testosterone. That's massive. But we need to be aware of it. Otherwise, you've got guys just going, well, I'm sat here at home, I feel kind of low, I feel kind of depressed, I don't know really what's wrong with me, what I can do about it, because there's no other information. No one's telling them anything different. But if you said, hey, there's a reason why you could be feeling like this, and it's these things, and if you just do this, you could feel a lot better. We need to be making that much more freely available.
Yeah, and it's well said, right? Just like a lot of education, a lot of normalization, just getting guys to do these tests and these screens. Is it true? I don't know where I heard this, so please correct me. Is like, I've heard that like all men will get prostate cancer. It's just a question of when, like if they will die before it happens or not. Is there any truth to that?
I haven't heard that stat. I know that prostate cancer is massively on the rise. I know as you get older, your risk massively increases. So I've got to be honest, I haven't educated myself enough around the prostate cancer issue, and I intend to, and actually go for my PSA test as well. So guys, also, this is something, I think in the old days, there was always a bit of thing about the old prostate test, it involved someone sticking their finger up your bum. These days you can go and get a blood prick test and actually just show in your blood, so you don't have to have the uncomfortable or enjoyable, depending on your take in sensation.
I didn't know that. I mean, like even that is good, because I do think there is like that level of discomfort from guys, or homophobia, whatever you want to call it. Like, I don't want someone putting anything up my butt. Like I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah, no, it can be screened in a blood test now. So
okay, a lot easier.
Yeah,
so easier than doing that. Okay, so that's pretty good. How about testosterone test? Like, when should guys get a testosterone test? Should it just be like a normal part of life, or is there maybe every decade or something? Like, do you recommend anything there?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say if you're in the age bracket, so I say if you're kind of like mid-40s onwards and you're starting to notice some of these symptoms, like I am more lethargic, or my libido is a big tell, right? So we know, Mark, you'll know from your work, there can be lots of reasons why libido goes, lots of psychosexual ones. But, if it's consistently that it's gone, you're lethargic, you are feeling a bit more anxious, more depressed, then go to your doctor and just say, look, I'd like to get a testosterone test. You get the levels, then right, you can go, oh, it's normal. What else can I look at? Or, oh, that's low. What can I do to address it? And then I'd say, for me personally now, I'm probably looking at like, if I'm asymptomatic, if I've got no symptoms, then probably every couple of years I get a test just to see where I'm at. If I would started to feel like I had the symptoms, maybe every kind of 6 months to a year, I might take a look.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So every few years, if you're listening to the show, just like go do it now. I mean, I think GPs can order that pretty easily. And there even are like at-home ones that you can do just to get like a general sense. There's some that are like urine tests even. So I think there's many ways to start to at least get a baseline about where you're at hormonally. And I know when they do a full hormone panel, they also do like, estrogen and progesterone, as well as a few other things, right? Like it's testing more than just testosterone.
Yeah. They can screen for all of those. But yeah, obviously at midlife, it's that testosterone that could really be the driver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, definitely go out there, do some of that. I guess my like last question for you, right, is like, is there, I guess another myth that I'm not sure, is there fluctuations around testosterone throughout on like a monthly or weekly basis? Or is it more kind of once you get to a good level, you're there and you have to just maintain it? Like, how does it move around?
No, our testosterone will fluctuate. I'm not sure it's as regular as a female's estrogen cycle. So, but it will fluctuate according to the stress we're under. It's crazy. Even things like, watching sporting events. If your team wins, your testosterone increases. If your team loses, your testosterone dips. No, seriously. So if you're a big sports fan and you're watching your team and they're losing week after week, that could actually push your testosterone down. So support good teams, I guess, is the outcome from that. But things like your diet, if you've gone through a period of like where you were drinking a lot, all those things have an effect. So you will get fluctuations.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm hearing is like, test multiple times, right? Or get a sense of like what your normal will be.
Yeah. And I'd say as well, if you've got a low test result, and that there's some things going on in your life that could have caused it to be low in terms of lifestyle factors, then maybe just wait. Don't wait another year. Just be like, okay, but before I commit to doing serious drastic action like going on CRT, maybe I'll just like wait a bit, clean some of those things up, and then just go again and see if it's come up a bit.
Totally. Well said, James. I've enjoyed having you on the show. I think it's a really, really important topic, and I think you have dived into it fantastically. Where can people find out more about you and the work that you do online if they want to follow you?
So we've got our website, which is themidlifementors.com, all one word, or you can find us on socials. It's always at the Midlife Mentors or at Midlife Mentors.
Great. And all that will be in the show notes, so y'all can go check that. We've had some questions about where the show notes are. They're just the description of the podcast. So on whatever platform you're listening to this on, you just click read more, show more, or description, or whatever it is. You'll see all of James's links there. Also put that book, The Happiness Curve, in there as well, if you're interested in learning more about that. So if you really enjoyed this show, thank you so much for tuning in. Please do all the social stuff, like, share, subscribe, all of that. Give it over to somebody that maybe is in their midlife, somebody that might be struggling with low testosterone and needs to hear some of these words, or someone that just wants, a guy who's isolated maybe needs to hear a conversation between two guys telling him to go out and make some friends, right? So share it with someone that that could benefit from this. It really does help to get more men into mental health treatment and break down the stigma that many of us face. So again, James, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Mark. It's been a pleasure.
And listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you next week, another episode of the Men's Therapy Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. And don't forget to visit menstherapy.online to learn more about the work that we are doing to support and inspire men. Until next time, keep moving forward.